Travis, we have the CEO of Organigram, Denis Arsenault here. Dennis, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Dennis, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Right on. Well, listen, I'm happy you came on because this is a subject that's kind of on everybody's mind for different reasons, and I think it's great to have you on so that we can kind of discuss through this and maybe even clear up some myths about the industry, because there's certainly some of those as well. But let's just kind of rewind and just give us an idea of what Organigram is. What is this company?
Well, first of all, I mean, in Canada, the only legal industry that's there now is medical marijuana. So Organigram was fortunate. It was actually the third applicant into Health Canada to get its license back in 2014. So at the end of the day, we're one of the 30 licensed producers in Canada to produce medical marijuana. And I think, as you say, the myth and the buzz and stuff, that's what's happening, is that the federal government has announced that they're going to move towards recreational marijuana. So therefore, Organigram and some of our competitors are in an enviable situation to be moving into a much larger marketplace. So, we're a licensed producer here in Moncton, New Brunswick. We're the only ones east of Ottawa, and we're in a great position to create employment and economic development here in Moncton.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to chat about. Let's get a sense right now. How many people do you currently employ right now?
I think, we basically started 2015 with 14 people, and we're at 46 or 47 currently.
That's quite a growth.
So it's, yes, and we anticipate to be employing 100 to 150 people here within 12 months.
So you made a reference to it. The federal government's looking to legalize this. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but you guys are obviously well positioned. So how is that? How is your company kind of positioned to kind of take advantage of what could be a very large market?
Yeah, I think the federal government has put out some messaging so far that, at the end of the day, there's a framework in place. There's 30 licensed producers. We're highly regulated. We're inspected by Health Canada on a monthly basis. The product that's being put out is safe. It's a high quality product. So there is all the messaging in place to say that the licensed producers will be able to produce marijuana for the recreational market also. So we anticipate that's the direction the federal government will go in terms of licensing the manufacturing of the product. And as we've read throughout a lot of the media, and again, provincial government messaging recently is, at the end of the day, I think the provinces themselves will dictate the distribution of recreational marijuana within each province, as they would do currently with liquor. So, the messaging has been pretty good in terms of from the federal and provincial governments. So we have an idea of how it will look. We're not quite sure when yet and the exact details, but we've got a pretty good idea how it will wash out.
So what's the potential for growth here exactly in this industry? Because it's been, we've seen states in the United States legalize it to some pretty strong growth. So what are you looking at? What are you? I don't know if I want to ask you, what's your dream scenario, but essentially, what's a realistic look at growth in this market?
And my role as CEO is to plan for that growth, so therefore we never deal with dream scenarios. We deal with a conservative marketplace, conservative numbers. So when we look at the medical market that we're currently operating in, the market is conservatively pegged at about $1.4 billion a year in sales for the medical market, and they're anticipating between 450 and 500,000 Canadian citizens would be taking medical marijuana, by the year 2020, for example. Now, when we move into recreational marijuana, we're fortunate that we can look at the state of Colorado, the state of Oregon, Washington, which has had recreational marijuana legal for a period of time. So if we take the numbers in Colorado, for example, where you have 5.4 million people, you have sales in excess of $100 million per month. So if you take that to the Canadian population, and you add a few other numbers that are very hard cap out there, in the U.S. they say there's about 13% of the population that consumes marijuana on a regular basis. They say in Canada it's 18%. So if you take all these numbers, you take, Colorado, it's $8 billion a year for Canada in cannabis sales, when the market would be legal for recreational. So you can anticipate maybe in Colorado, because the adjoining states are not legal, you might say there's 25% that is crossing the border, the tourists coming in.
Sure.
But if you take 25% off $8 billion to give you an answer, it's still, $6 billion. It's a good sized market.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And of course, you guys are now positioned. I mean, one of the reasons why I want to have you on the show here is, we've kind of had this theme kind of running through the show of we're talking to about the economy. We talked about when the state of the province kind of came through. You seem to be in a position, and particularly Moncton now, with your business being positioned here, to really take advantage of this growth.
Yeah. Well, there's two things to growth, right? At the end of the day, you need to build a business. It's not relevant whether I'm selling marijuana or shirts or a jacket. You've got to have a motivated workforce. You've got to have a low cost. You've got to have a good product, and you have great customer service. So this is the same foundation as any business. Fortunately, we're in a highly regulated industry. So I can't have a competitor to open up across the street. You have to have a license. So in that sense, we're very fortunate. The missing piece, and this is where we appreciated the government coming to the table and assisting Organigram, is you need to raise capital. At the end of the day, we've already spent probably close to $20 million here at our facility in Moncton. And for us to position ourselves where we want to be to grab a bigger part of recreational marijuana, we may have to raise another $50 million. Okay, we are very aggressive entrepreneurs. We have a great team, we have a low cost, and we have a great platform to expand on. So if you're going to want to go out and raise another $50 million, I've got 30 competitors that are trying to chase that same investment dollar. So the province, for example, having made that investment in Organigram, it's just another piece of the puzzle to make sure that when I got to go out to that marketplace, whether it be in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, New York, the places where you go to raise this type of money, that the investors like the picture and like what Organigram has to offer. So, these are the pieces that need to be put in place.
I guess that's probably one of the criticisms that I hear about this. Let's backtrack a little bit. The government, the provincial government, is giving your company up to $990,000 over 3 years in salary compensation. Is that right?
It's a salary rebate. In other words, we have to create the employment, we have to pay the employee, and only if we do and meet those criteria will the government be advancing funds. So at the end of the day, we need to create that employment for the government to offer that assistance.
And a lot of people say, well, look, this is a private company. Why should you get government money to kind of help you pull
Well, the province of New Brunswick doesn't operate in a bubble. I mean, at the end of the day, municipalities, provincial governments, federal governments are giving assistance to various businesses throughout the entire world to entice them to create employment in their area. I mean, the best example we can give you right now, we read in the city of Alberta, city of Edmonton, Alberta, the governments have advanced like $100 million to build a hockey rink for the Edmonton Oilers. So at the end of the day, we say to ourselves, the province of New Brunswick doesn't operate in a bubble. This is what happens, and this is what they got to compete against. So I think the province is very cognizant that they can make investments in companies like Organigram, who can create employment and economic activity. Then it gives the province the ability then to maybe make some investments in the social fabric of our society. So at the end of the day, you can't have one without the other. We can't have social programs without jobs. And we can't have jobs here if we're not competing with the other jurisdictions that are offering funding. I didn't create the system, nor did the province of New Brunswick, but the province of New Brunswick has to operate within that environment.
It's like you say, there's so many people that have these licenses already, and they're trying to get a piece of this pie as well.
And I think one thing that's important to note too, and this is the way that Health Canada has this set up, this is a beautiful thing for the province of New Brunswick and for for New Brunswick citizens and taxpayers here. Our license is attached to our address. Organigram cannot pick up and move to Nova Scotia or Ottawa or anywhere tomorrow. The license is attached. So the economic development that we create right here, whether it be with funds that are from the province of New Brunswick or capital investment, they're going to stay in Moncton. The address that Organigram operates under is attached to the address, not to the name, not to Denis Arsenault. So that helps, because we've all seen through a lot of the years where governments have funded organizations to open up here in New Brunswick, and when the funding ends, the job leaves. In this sense, so it is a right industry. Look, from a perspective of a taxpayer's dollar, the industry is going to have to stay here in New Brunswick. It's growing to capital investments of $400 or $500 million. It's going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs eventually. And the bottom line is New Brunswick's position to grab some of that.
Excellent. Let's talk about one more criticism or stigma, let's say,
Sure.
because I wanted to make sure we get this kind of cleared up. I was wondering if it bothered you when you look at some of the mainstream media, newspapers or whatnot, and they refer to your businesses with words like pot and weed? Because I would imagine that right now it's medicinal marijuana as it is, and that kind of feeds into some of what people kind of, when they see this, they think that this is a bad thing, it's a bad substance, somehow it's going to get into the hands of children and whatnot. Does that bother you?
Well, I'll address two sides of it. First, the medical part. What bothers me is that, call it the College of Physicians or the medical community, is messaging that they're having difficulty or struggling to prescribe medical marijuana for a person that has chronic pain or other disorders, PTSD for example, but they wholeheartedly embrace prescribing opiates, which are, and it's all over the media, highly addictive, killing tens of thousands of people just in Canada. So the hypocrisy there on the medical side. On the recreational side, at the end of the day, marijuana has been sold in every corner of our country, by Billy Bob, behind the store,
back of his van.
Yeah, back of his van for 40, 50 years. We are not going to change drug policy. We're not going to change the way society functions. So the government might as well tax it, and by taxing it, you're going to be able to minimize the exposure to children. Because at the end of the day, same thing with liquor. Back when I was growing up, my father brought me to the bootlicker. Okay, because at the end of the day, there were bootlickers on literally every street corner. Well, the bootlicker would sell liquor to an underage child. As the legal distribution was put in place for alcohol, the bootlickers all died.
It all
went out of business. It'll be the same thing with drugs. Eventually, it'll be the same thing.
That is pretty much our time. Thank you so much for coming on. I went by real fast, but I'm happy you were able to come out and kind of clear this up with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming in.